to carry me home. Swing low, stereo, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, stereo, coming for to carry me home. Coming for to carry me home. Coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home.
Good to have you back.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, ABC, double X, Y, Z. Cats in a cupboard, ash you can find me. On the rock island line, it's a mighty fine road. Rock island line, it's the road to ride. Rock island line, it's a mighty fine road. If you want to ride it, got to ride it like a fine. Get your ticket at the station for the Rock Island line. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you mourn. Oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you mourn. Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you weep,
subject up about Washington.
Pharaoh's army got drowned.
The president of
Oh, Mary, don't you?
Nancy, the director of the tour.
Oh, Mr. Satan, he got married. He missed that soul
There's a headline
that he
meeting.
thought he
I'm
had.
usually on, but I mean it's usually Tory.
Pharaoh's army got drowned.
Everything, but
I know Dick.
I would just mention
Oh, Mary, don't you?
Tory say, you know, sometimes
Tory loves the hell out of it.
she's
Said, oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you mourn. Mary, don't you weep, don't you mourn. Pharaoh's army got drowned.
That was a
Oh, Mary, don't you weep.
she
I said, oh, Mary, don't you weep, don't you
Can I tell you
mourn.
something?
Mary, don't you weep, don't you mourn. Pharaoh's army got drowned. Oh, Mary, don't you
For that, preliminary.
Scott Siebert is coming back. Who's the conductor of the Smithsonian
I'm like low, and I can't tell you all, but it'll be. I mean, it'll be the heavy hitter. Yeah, it'll be.
All right.
I'm proud I may not be able to hear you.
It's going to be enough here.
I'm calling.
This story starts back in the early 1930s when my grandmother wrapped me up in an old quilt. And she started sharing these beautiful, beautiful children's stories of how Brother Rabbit lost his tail, why Brother Turtle smiles, how Sister Hummingbird came to be. All these beautiful stories. There were 15 of them. Beautiful children's stories. And I asked her later, I said, where did these stories come from, grandmother? She said, it came from your great-great-grandmother, and she was American Indian. And she made an incredible journey when she was a young girl, and she was a magician with herbal medicines. And as time went on, I found out what those herbal medicines were. Because I didn't realize it, but almost immediately she started teaching me to be an herbalist. I'm two things. I'm a storyteller, Oneh, and I'm also an herbalist. I dig my herbs. I don't go buy them. I dig them. And so anyway, she told me the herbs came from your great-great-grandmother also. And then she started sharing her story with me. Now, you are familiar with the removal of our Indian tribes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, good. I'm having people, this morning we had people from France here. I don't know who was confused the most. They live here, these folks from France. But anyway, in the year 1839, right here in Lauderdale County, Alabama, they started gathering the Indian people up. They built a stockade 15 miles east of us, a large stockade, and they started placing these Indian people in there. In the meantime, they found two young girls hiding in an old abandoned house, right on the bluff there. They were American Indian girls. They were about 17 years old. They were sisters. And they carried them and placed them with the rest of them. And they did something a little bit different with this group. We can't find another group they did this certain thing to. They hung metal tags around their neck, octagon-shaped brass tags. Had the number on one side, U.S. on the other. The two young girls were number 59 and number 60. Then they walked them from right here, the federal troops did, the militia, walked them from right here to what we call Oklahoma today. They called it wasn't a state then. They called it the Indian Nations. That's where they were taking all the Indians and placing them in one spot there. The southeastern tribes. President Jackson to send them over there. But this gentleman died. But anyway, it was still a hanging offense to be an American Indian here. What to do? They fell in love with one another. They couldn't go to the courthouse and get a marriage certificate because she wasn't an American citizen. And it was a hanging offense to be an American Indian. what would they do? One alternative, hide. And that's exactly what they did. They moved about 20 miles in this direction right here as a crow flies, right on the Alabama-Tennessee state line. And she almost immediately started to practicing those magical medicines of hers. I'm going to prove to you in a minute just how magical they are. And people started to come to her. A lot of people started to come to her. And in the year 1845, a Methodist minister showed up. His name was Wiley B. Edwards. Not only was Dr. Edwards a Methodist minister, he was the top educator here in Lauderdale County at the time. An absolutely brilliant man, a scholar. But he was suffering. So he found my great-great-grandmother just like a lot of other people did. And like a lot of other people, she cured him. Well, he was so fascinated with the journey she had just made, this long 5-year journey back through a wilderness. But most of all, it was her medicines. He was fascinated with those medicines, as like most people are, even today. That he came back on February the 13th, 1845, and he asked her, could he interview her? And she said yes. And he started almost immediately. He started writing. It ended up 2 years later, a 168-page journal written about her journey, her medicines, and everything else. And I have the journal. It is absolutely a fantastic piece of work. But this is the first page of the journal. I, Parson Wiley B. Edwards, take pen in hand in this year of our Lord, 1845, to render a service to Levi Hip, my great-great-grandfather, and his wife Mary. That was the English name they gave her. There has been much sickness in this country this year, I myself suffering terribly. I heard of Miss Mary's cures made from the low places on the creeks and woods lots, so I found Miss Mary. With a salve, she cured a bad case of yellow toes, which makes walking pleasurable again. I also had a disorder of the middle. She's got my middle performing as it should. Though she not be a citizen, I find her to be a person of good character, having sympathy for all that's sick and troubled, and her activity is beyond her sex. And now he describes her. Miss Mary, she be slim and fragile in appearance, black hair, and eyes of a color that I have not ever seen. She has learned to speak tolerably well, having a few years back made a very long walk back from the Indian nation. So we're sitting this day on February the 13th in the year of our Lord, 1845, and we're exchanging payments for the writing of her journey. Wiley B. Edwards. Miss Mary said she could go down to the low places and find the willow tree. And she said she would take the inside bark and the roots and boil them together until it becomes a thick yellow tea. You drink it, and that will cure the big hurting of the head. As you probably know, they found the main ingredient of aspirin 50 years ago in the bark of the willow tree, salicylic acid. But 160 years ago, that young Indian girl was curing people's headaches with the same thing. Her medicines are magical. I've never had a headache in my life. I don't wear glasses, not even to read with. 8.5 million pounds, 35 years. I have no arthritis. And I went to the doctor over 60 years ago, and I hadn't been back. You are what you eat. Well, over 34 years ago, I found what's left of my grandmother's people at Sapulpa and Kellyville and Mounds, Oklahoma. And I went out there. They wanted to talk to me, and I went out there. I carried everything I had because I heard that they didn't much believe me. So I carried all my grandmother's children's stories, all the medicines I've got, and several other things. We have only, at the time, there were only 9 women could speak the language. There's 4 today. I do not speak the fluent language. It is way, way too hard. He said, what is your favorite medicine, Mr. Hendricks? I said, red root. What do you do with red root, Mr. Hendricks? I said, the aching bones and aching muscles. You're not supposed to have that, Mr. Hendricks. I said, well, maybe not. Where did you get that, Mr. Hendricks? I got it from my Golaha, my grandmother. What else do you do with it, Mr. Hendricks? I said, I bathe in it before I go to funerals. He said, you're not supposed to have that. And then all of a sudden, over to the right, a little lady stood up. Mr. Hendricks, you say you've got her songs. And when she said songs, she did not mean songs. She meant stories. how Brother Rabbit lost his tail. That's what she meant. She said, "Would you sing me a song, Mr. Hendricks?" And I said, "Yes, grandmother, I will." I said, I'm gonna sing your song about how Kati came to be. Kati is the hummingbird in my grandmother's language. So I sang her song. I told the story, and I told all 14 of them. Mr. Simon Harvey stood up. He said, "You're not supposed to have all this." He said, "You're not supposed to have all this." He said, "We cannot make up our mind, Mr. Hendricks, whether you're a human being or not." Whether I was a human being or not. I called my wife that night. I said, "Honey, they're out here trying to figure out whether I'm a human being or not." She says, "Well, for God's sake, stay with them." I said, "I've always thought maybe you were one." Irish humor. So the next morning, they found out that I was going to be a human being because they carried me to my second teacher. Folks, I've had 4 beautiful teachers in my life, my 85 years. I've had my grandmother, who was 1/4 Yuchi Indian. The lady they were going to carry me to that next morning was going to be my second teacher, Miss Minnie Long. My third teacher was Elsie Corngrower, full-blooded Creek lady. My teacher today, at 85 years old, is Mary Walking-Stick, full-blooded Cherokee.
Tell you, travel on the riverway. Oh, but my memory lingers. All you once were to me. I'm gonna give you one more chance to prove what you can be. Oh, any time you wanna come back home, drop me a line. Oh, say no more, you're wrong. You had your chance, oh, to play the game fair. Heart, you only left a load of care. Oh, now back to me. We've all lost someone that we love, and all we have to do is trust that our fate will be reuniting us, that our fate will be reuniting us. We've all lost someone that
No place for us to stand, close doors and sing and sing. Oh, I climb any mountainside, high ground so we can breathe. If you found the truth won't set you free, we can fly away, singing our glory. If your story starts with good as gone, yes, we better keep moving on. Moving on, moving on. Yes, we better keep moving on. Moving on, moving on. Yes, we better keep moving on. It takes more than
I may roam, I may ramble, something about you, Alabama, that keeps me coming home to you. Maybe the moonlight on a mountain lake or strawberry pie, for goodness sake. Nothing sweeter than the smell of cedar trees in my backyard. Oh, I may roam, I may ramble, so many things about you, Alabama, that keep me coming home to you.
I was down in the dark, felt so all alone. Worries and fears just seemed all around. I couldn't see the right from the wrong. Out in the dark, I wandered alone. Oh, I wandered alone. I followed my path and tried to read the sign. Out of the dark and into the light, I stayed right with her even when
That tune, play that music, it's dandy. They play that music for you. The music with the surge right to the core. The fans shout out, just give me more. Play the music, it's dandy. They play that music for you. They come to Alabama just to have some fun. Sing and play and have the show when they come. Play that music, it's dandy. They play that music for you. Folk and blues is what they love to do. Bluegrass is gospel, oh, they do that too. Play that music, it's dandy. They play that music for you. All right.
I saw the light. bring it to me. Bring your sweet love, bring it on home to me. Yeah, 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 yeah. You know I laughed when you left, but I knew I just only hurt myself. Won't you bring it to me? Bring your sweet love, bring it on home to me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So if you ever change your mind about leaving me behind, won't you bring it to me?
I've had 4 teachers in my life. They've all been women. They've all been American Indian. I have been blessed. Blessed beyond words. So they carried me to her. I'm not going to go into everything. I spent 3 days with her. That was my first session with her, I guess you'd call it. But I'm not going into that because you guys would be, well, you would be late tomorrow. You'd be here tomorrow sometime. What I'm going to do is go into that 3rd day because you've come to hear about the wall. It came from her. She looked at me in the middle part of that 3rd day. She says, I sense you have a problem, Mr. Hendricks. And I said, yes, grandmother, I do have a problem. I've had a problem for a very long time. I've always wanted to do something for my great-great-grandmother. She made this incredible journey when she was a young girl, but I don't know how to honor her. She said, I can take care of that, Mr. Hendricks. She said, now, Mr. Hendricks, said, do you own your property? And I said, yes, grandmother, I do. Do you plan living there the rest of your life? Yes, grandmother. Very well, Mr. Hendricks. Said, we shall all pass this earth, Mr. Hendricks. Only the stones will remain. We honor our ancestors with stones. And I knew I had it made because Lauderdale County has got more rocks than any place in the state of Alabama. Tennessee River right down below us, 9 miles. Huge farming community where farmers have thrown them out of their fields and along hedgerows. She says, but do you know what to do with those stones? I said, no, ma'am. She said, build her 2 walls, Mr. Hendricks. Right here's where I started 35 years ago. I can show you the first stone I laid. One wall from where she left from, where you live now, right? I said, yes. To the Indian nations. And 1 wall for her journey, this one here, from where here in Oklahoma, Indian nations, back home. No mortar, no cement, nothing foreign. And you're to lay 1 stone at a time for each step she made. Can you do that? I said, yes, grandmother, I can. She said, and she left me with these beautiful, beautiful words. She said, if you'll do exactly what I told you to do, I promise you that you'll find your path in life, and then you may sing your songs. So for 35 years, I've sang my songs. I came home and told my Irish lass what I was going to do, and it was complete silence, seems like for about 10 minutes. She said, are you telling me that you're going to build this rock wall the rest of your life, probably? I said, yes. She said, well, big boy, go get it. That's where words she said to me, go get it, big boy. She said, but go down with the cotton gin in the morning. Now, I don't know how you measure pounds. Is it liters or?
Kilos.
Kilos, okay. Have you got a pretty good idea how much pound in a kilo?
I think
2 pounds.
2 pounds,
2 pounds
is
is
a
1
kilo.
kilo. 2.2 pounds is a kilo.
Okay.
2.2.
I mean, I'll do it in pounds.
That's okay.
Okay, then you can kind of. So she said, weigh your truck empty, my wife did suggest, and then came back and weigh it level full. Well, this is my 4th truck. I weighed the truck empty and full. It weighed 900 pounds. So she's kept up with the loads. As you sit here today, there's over 8.5 million pounds of stones here. Like nearly 20 million kilos. But I picked them up 3 times. I picked them up and placed them on a truck, then on a wheelbarrow when I got here and placed them in the wall. So I picked up way over 27 million pounds. That'd be over, what, so many kilos. I don't think I can figure that out. So it's over 27 million pounds. I've wore out 3 trucks, 22 wheelbarrows, over 2,500 pairs of gloves, 3 dogs, and 1 85-year-old man. It is the largest unmortared rock wall in the United States. It's the largest memorial to a Native American woman, and quite possibly one of the largest memorials to a woman because the Statue of Liberty is a symbol. It's not a woman, it's a symbol. It's listed as one of the 10 top environmental arts by 22 of the top art teachers from the best art colleges in the United States. It's also, 15 months ago, they placed Helen Keller's birthplace, Bellingrath Gardens, in my grandmother's wall in the Library of Congress. So I've saved the best to last. Why did that young Indian girl come back? She came back through a wilderness. This is 25 years before the Civil War. She came back. She walked through a wilderness. Why in the world would she come back? Her sister stayed out there. She was out there. Her people were out there, hanging a fence to be an American Indian. We cannot find even a man that can prove he came back. She's the only one we can prove out of 17 years. And we have had a lot of people helping us. In 1952, when my grandmother was way up in her 90s, I asked her that very question. I said, Grandmother, why did she come back? And this is what my grandmother said to me. She said, honey, my two sisters and I have thought about it all of our life, and we've come up with 3 reasons that your great-great-grandmother came back. She said, when your great-great-grandmother was born, that her grandmother took my great-great-grandmother's birthing cord and placed it in this river here, the Tennessee. It made the river her sister. She always referred to this river as her sister. Second, she had a vision or a dream of her grandmother beckoning her to come home the whole time she was gone. And third, we call it the Tennessee River today, but all the tribes that lived along this beautiful river of ours, they had one name for it. They called it the Singing River. In my grandmother's language, it's Nunase, the river that sings. All the tribes believed there was a young woman that lived in this river and sang songs to the people and protected them. So my grandmother said when my great-great-grandmother got to the Indian Nations in 1839, she went and listened to all the rivers and streams she could find out there, and there were no songs. She said my sister Juana Lee, who stayed, said she's like a wildflower, said she can grow anywhere I can't. If I stay out here in this dark place, I'll die. I've got to go home. I've got to go home to my river. And she came home. That's the short version of my grandmother's story. Hendricks in 1641 came from the Leiden, Netherlands as a master carpenter and landed in Philadelphia. That's my about 10 great-great-grandmothers.
So you got Dutch roots.
Yeah, Hendricks is also a real Dutch name.
Dutch name,
Hendricks.
yeah.
Yeah, we've got this lady did fantastic, and I kept thinking, I thought, that's Leiden, that's got to, I've had people, it's a college town, isn't it? Yeah, I got, I tell you what, I've had it made. I'm not joking. Okay, now, what we're going to do right now, have you got just a few more minutes?
Oh, fine. We got
Okay, what I'd like to do, this section right here, and this section right here, I have stones from all 50 states, 127 countries, territories, and islands from all over the world. Would you like to see the back and front tooth of a T-Rex? How about a mastodon? Okay, I got all kinds of stones here I'm going to share with you. Brontosaurus. I've got a brontosaurus. I've got a meteorite. You want to see some of them?
Yeah.
Okay.